Good evening, all. Welcome. My name is David Gibson. I'm the director of the Center on Religion and Culture, your host for this evening's conversation with Sam Hunter, our special guest. I'm just here really to set the table for our discussion this evening and for May Adrales. May is the director of Fordham's theater program and describes herself as, quote, a director, artistic leader, teacher, and mother. Proof of the last one is right sitting up there in the corner, so if you need a second source. May's remarkable resume includes having directed over 30 world premieres. Her work has been seen most recently at Second Stage, the Manhattan Theater Club, and many other prominent venues. She's directed and taught at Juilliard, Yale, Harvard, NYU, and Bard College, and has served on faculty at the Yale School of Drama and Brown Trinity MFA program. We're really most fortunate to have her here at Fordham, as you all are. We're also so grateful to have our friend Jim McDermott, a longtime friend of Fordham and of the Jesuits and the CRC, and a popular theater critic and entertainment writer. Jim and May will lead our conversation this evening with Sam, but we're also inviting questions from you all, the audience, especially the students. And so as we go along, we'll open it up to the audience. Just raise your hand, and I've got a microphone. I'll wander around or just speak at performance level volume. We'll also have, at a certain point, a reading of a selection of Sam's work by two of our Fordham theater students. May will explain all of that, and we'll introduce tonight's special guest. Thank you. May, over to you. The microphone should be on. Yep.
Is this thing on? It is. Okay. Hi, thank you for such a lovely introduction, and it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm so pleased to introduce my friend and esteemed writer, Samuel D. Hunter. Sam has an incredible body of work, including The Whale, which is also a screenplay and stage play, Bright New Boise, The Case for the Existence of God, Little Bear Bridge Road, and among countless others. He's garnered Drama Desk Awards, Lortel, and Obie Awards, Critics Circle Awards, and is a MacArthur Genius Fellow. His list of accolades go on, but I wanted to, I'm so honored that you're here, Sam, and that I have a chance to introduce you. I first met Sam at the Lark Play Development Center in 2008, where he was the second Playwright of New York Fellow, an esteemed fellowship. And I remember being on that committee and reading some of his work and just being so entranced by how he understands and makes us see the deepest and most complex part of ourselves. I've been enraptured by what he's able to do with the simplicity of what he writes. In all of his varied works, what has always meant the most to me is how he's able to transform the mundane to the mystical and the spiritual, and let us see the forgotten and how they turn beautiful. And with lyricism and simplicity, he portrays characters that help us see the goodness and worthiness of ourselves. So my pleasure, to talk with you and have people get to know you better.
Thank you so much for having me. Really happy to be here.
Sam, when I was thinking about this conversation we were going to have today, I found myself thinking, like, weirdly of, like, The Price is Right. You know, I know, very strange. You get to that point where you're maybe going to get the car and you pull the wheel down and there's all the numbers that, but for me it was like all the different topics we could talk about with you. We could talk about Idaho, we could talk about end times, we could talk about Laurie Metcalf. There's like a million different things, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about a lot of those things tonight. But I just want to say thank you so much for agreeing to be here. Thank you for teaching here when you've taught here. I just think I think all of us that have seen your work or read your work, you bring something special and unexpected that really stays with you. I saw Clarkston in London in the fall, and I'm haunted by the ending of that play. People are sick of me talking about basically ruining the ending of the play because it moved me so much. And I find that often that your work builds to unexpected moments that just they're haunting in a positive way, and and become part of you. So I'm just so grateful that you agreed to come and be with us tonight. I thought I would just start our conversation with, probably a question you've been asked a million times. Like, how did you become a writer? What was it that made you want to become a writer, and also most specifically a playwright?
Yeah, it's. I grew up in a small-ish town in northern Idaho, and I didn't really have a lot of access to new writing for the American theater. But I was also. We were talking earlier in the office. I went to high school for a time at a fundamentalist Christian high school, a very hardcore one. I was saying the head pastor is now kind of a leader in the Christian nationalist movement here in the U.S. And I knew I was gay. I knew that I wanted to be an artist, but I kind of had to do it in secret because this kind of stuff I was writing was not going to be acceptable in that environment. And there was kind of a really seminal moment for me when one of my English teachers, I think this was 10th grade, was actually the pastor's wife. And she read selections of T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland out loud in order to make fun of it. To be like, this is an example of godless literature. And I listened to it and I was just like, what is this? And I just immediately sought it out. And the good thing about Moscow, Idaho is that the University of Idaho has the largest library in the state. And so I could go there. This was pre-internet. Well, the internet was just starting. This was 96, 97. But so I could go to the stacks and find this stuff, and I was writing a lot of angsty teenage poetry in secret, way too much of it. And I was outed and I had to leave that school. So when I went to the public school, I could kind of do it a little bit more openly, be gay and be a writer a little bit more openly. And there was a English teacher there who really encouraged me in a way that was incredibly meaningful. But I hadn't really thought about theater. I liked being in plays. I was tall and I could talk loud, and in Moscow, Idaho, that got you the roles. I encountered two plays that really shifted my thinking. The first was Our Town by Thornton Wilder, and the second was Angels in America by Tony Kushner. And the second being really I didn't really know that this was a thing, writing new plays for the American theater. Somebody told me that Tony Kushner taught at NYU. He did not, but I didn't know that, so I applied anyway. And so I applied to two schools. I applied to the University of Idaho, where anybody in my family who went to college, they went there. My brother is now on the faculty there. And NYU. And I wrote a one-act play as my sample. And I don't even think I told my parents, but I ended up getting in. And to my parents' wonderful credit, they mortgaged their house to help me pay for that tuition, which then was I think it was $24,000. This was 2000. I know, it's quaint now. But then it was astronomical. It was just paying that much for college just felt insane. And then I moved to New York. So that's kind of how it all started.
Just to follow up, what was it about Our Town and Angels in America? Do you remember now what about each of them spoke to you?
I think Our Town was, for those of you who don't know Our Town, it's a very kind of it's a 3-act play. The first 2 acts kind of masquerade as this kind of quaint Americana. It's set in this town called Grover's Corners, which doesn't exist, but it's in New Hampshire, I think, is that where it's at? And it's this town and people going on dates at the soda shop and stuff, but all of a sudden this kind of something starts creeping in. And I remember there's a wedding at the end of the second act, I think, and the stage manager character, who's kind of the narrator, has this very complicated monologue that's kind of how he doesn't believe in marriage and and I remember being what is going on in this play? And then act 3 is set in a graveyard and everybody's dead. And for me, it was cold water being thrown on my face. I didn't know that theater could do that. It was just so And by the time Emily gets to the monologue about, I forget the line that she repeats, like something about how you can't relive things or something like that. I forget. I'm gonna butcher it. Do you remember?
Look at when she said to her mother, like, look at
Yeah, look at me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that just was devastating. And again, it was something I didn't know theater could do that. And then Angels in America taught me that theater could be relevant and current and incendiary. You know, I mean, it was back then when I encountered that play, it was probably only 5 years old, because I think it won the Pulitzer in '93, if I'm right, and this was probably like 1998, '99. So.
It's funny. Well, it's not funny. It's horrifying to hear about the upbringing and the school that you were at, and what you went through. A little bit. I mean, we can talk about that more. I just want to say I'm sort of shocked. I knew that, but if I didn't know any of your background, when I read your plays, I think you write some of the most sympathetic Christian fundamentalists I've ever seen, and in many plays. It's not just one. I was reading recently A Great Awakening. A Great Wilderness. Great Wilderness.
Yeah, Great Wilderness.
And Walt, who is, I'm not even sure if he exactly fits this, but he's clearly he's in a conversion therapy, but you love him from the moment that play begins, and you find out what he's about, at least on one level, right away, and it doesn't matter. And it's sort of stunning in a way, maybe more so in light of your life experience, that you would write characters like that. Where does that come from? Or
I mean, maybe part of it was me making sense of that stuff. I mean, with that play specifically, A Great Wilderness, I actually got in trouble for that play because that was a commission from Seattle Rep. This was a long time ago, like probably 15 years ago. And I wrote this play about a gay conversion therapist, and the first scene of the play is this like 80-year-old guy and this 15-year-old kid, and you realize what the dynamic is, and they're like out in the middle of nowhere at this like cabin. And you think, okay, this play is going to be about the young, bright, gay kids schooling the old bigot. But I wasn't interested in writing that play because that doesn't, to me, that's not real life. Like bigots normally remain bigots. And I don't think that if you look at interviews from like the guy who used to run Exodus International, which was like the largest gay conversion therapy program in the country, he's a very gentle, loving guy, and he genuinely thought he was helping people, and he has genuine remorse that he did that with his life. You know what I mean? I don't think it excuses it, and I think he ruined a lot of people. But I think that's kind of the tragedy of A Great Wilderness. It's not until the last 3 lines of the play that he realized what he's been doing with his entire life. You know.
yes.
So, but to me, I don't think I've ever written a villain. I'd have to kind of actually go through my plays and make sure that that's true. But I don't believe in good guys and bad guys. I think everybody is operating within their own moral framework. And if people are actually villainous sociopaths, I have no interest in writing about them. Because here's the thing, it's sort of like counterintuitively in that community, I received a lot of love. You know what I mean? Like until it stopped very abruptly. It was like a cliff. And that's, I think, the sort of tragedy of it, you know.
You know, in The Whale, there's that astonishing moment near the end where Charlie says, I remember the second part more better than the first, something like, did you ever wonder whether people...
I think...
the second line is, everyone is amazing.
People are... Do you ever get the feeling that people are incapable of not caring? People are amazing.
Is that so... I wonder, I mean, that is an astonishing line, again, from the point of view of Charlie, who has been through so much, so much terrible stuff. But he's sort of like that the whole play. That is seems to be his point of view on life. And it's so profound, I sort of wondered, I wonder how much of you there is in that.
I mean, I've never written anything directly autobiographical, but there's definite pieces of me. I think of the plays as kind of more or less autofiction, you know, like funhouse mirror versions of me if my life had taken different routes, you know. And sometimes it's direct and sometimes it's indirect. but yeah, and I think there's just something about that play. I made the decision when I first started writing that play that I wanted Charlie to be like the Christ figure of that play. This sort of like unrelenting love for humans, even at the point of crucifixion. You know.
Yeah, it's just such a. It's a very moving part of your work. I find that underlying empathy. I mean, like as you say, that you never seem to paint a villain. May, I think you were about to say something.
I'm fascinated that our town was one of the first pieces of inspiration, because what I find so compelling about your work is that you find the profound and the mundane, and you've been able to translate that theatrically in the most simplest components. Like in Little Bear Bridge Road, it's a floating couch. In Case for Existence of God, it's just the cubicle. Yeah. Can you talk about that process or how you envision these plays?
It's funny, the two plays that you mentioned, it's weird. I feel like I never really understand what my writerly concerns are until like 2 years later. And you're like, oh, that's what was really... And I think something I'm starting to understand about the plays that I've written in the last, say, 6 years is that, and it started with The Case for the Existence of God, which is two guys sitting in a cubicle who don't stand up until the last 5 minutes of the play, which is sort of like, how can you say the largest possible thing in using the smallest possible container? And somehow, I think you hear the big ideas better when it's just distilled down to the tiniest thing. You know what I mean? Like Little Bear Ridge Road, the themes are very, very, I mean, they're as big as the universe. They're about like the smallness of our lives and the vastness of the universe and the sort of like the ways that we push one another forward. But to your point, it's a couch, and people are mostly watching TV in that play. You know, there's this thing that the late great Robert Wilson said. There's this old Einstein on the Beach documentary, and he was talking about the way that he makes theater, and he said, it's one thing to put a Baroque candelabra on top of a Baroque table. It's another thing to put a Baroque candelabra on top of a giant rock, and maybe you can see the Baroque candelabra better when it's on the giant rock. And the way that I feel like I've translated that to me is like, maybe you could write a play called A Case for the Existence of God and set it in the Vatican, or you could write a play called A Case for the Existence of God and set it in a cubicle. And maybe you can see God more clearly in the cubicle, actually, counterintuitively.
That's great. Over the course of our conversation tonight, we want to take questions from the audience. Does anybody have a question for Sam?
At what point when you're writing a play, do you need to hear the actors say your lines so it can take you to the next level?
That's a great question. One of the things about playwriting that is so unique is that, unlike, I think, any other form of writing, including screenwriting, you're sculpting time and space, or really time. It's really about like a play is almost like a musical score, and I have to hear that very early on. And I also realized early on that I write plays for actors. I don't write plays as intellectual exercises or to show off what I can do with plot or you know, like I want to write vehicles for actors because then A, actors will want to do the plays, and B, they're gonna have like, it's like giving a really good instrument to a brilliant musician, you know what I mean? So it's early. I usually, my husband is a dramaturg, so he's like my closest collaborator, and so we'll share drafts back and forth. But I'm actually working on a new play right now, and I've done several drafts, and I just got to the point a couple weeks ago where I was like, I have to hear this out loud. I don't know. Like I've gone just as far as I can without knowing what it actually is in time. You know what I mean? And I have like my very trusted actors that I love to work with. Like I love a cranky actor. Do you know what I mean? Who like is just gonna like be like, I don't know what that line is doing. I don't know how to do. You know what I mean? Whereas like there are those actors who can make anything sound great. And in a developmental process, I want to keep them out of the room because I need somebody who's gonna really like interrogate the play, you know. So yeah, early is the answer.
Thank you.
Over here.
Question I had was regarding when writing, either for the screen or for a play. How do you overcome a block when you have like how to get past a scene or how to get past an act?
Like when you feel blocked?
Yes.
Yeah, I get past writer's block by not believing that it exists. Like, I think there's just always something to be writing, even if it's not dialogue. But also sometimes if I feel like I get to a point where like I don't know, because I don't really outline. Like with screenwriting, you kind of have to because it's part of the contracts, and you're kind of that's more like work for hire. Most of screenwriting, but with plays, I don't like to over outline because I find that it gets way too rigid, and there's no element of surprise or kind of, you know, surprising yourself or joy or whatever. But if I do get to that point where it's sort of like I just don't know what the next scene is, like often I'll just go for a jog and think about it. And there's something about this sort of like repetitive physical activity that just dislodges something. But yeah, the hardest part for me is like the idea, because that's the thing that I feel like I have very little control over. Like I'm not a writer who can start with situation. I can't just be like, you know, 5 college friends meet up and one of them has a secret. You know what I mean? Like I just can't, like, because I'm just always sort of like, who cares? You know, like I have to start from a place of sort of like, why does this play need to exist? And I think that's the hardest part, because that is something that like can come from anywhere. It can come from the most mundane things. It can come from the biggest ideas ever. I mean, Little Bear Ridge Road came from a billboard I saw, like in Providence, that was like advertising classic television, and it for some reason that just occupied me, and I was like,
I thought you were
what?
going to say it was a bad real estate or whatever. However,
No, it
you
wasn't even
sold
that
the house.
concrete. It was really just like television as anesthesia, and I was just like, oh, and something just kind of like occupied me about that, but I think after that it's work, it's labor. You know, and I really continue to view writing, it's a labor I love. I love doing it. But I try to view it as sort of like I'm going and putting in the hours rather than like sitting around and waiting for some sign from the gods. Do you know what I mean?
Has a character ever surprised you? In terms
Yeah.
of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I was writing The Whale, I didn't think Mary was a character until she showed up. I mean that sounds kind of twee to say that, but like, I just remember getting further and further into it, and then I'd be like, oh, the mom, you know, and that's why she's only, you know, I think when Tasha Lawrence did that role, both in Denver and New York City, she joked that it was, I think, a 12-minute scene that she was in, and she like traveled around the country to do this 12-minute scene. And like Sam Morton, who did it in the movie, she came in from the UK for like, I think we only had her for 3 days.
She's a princess track.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true in Little Bear Ridge Road as well. The nurse who comes in at the end, and that is such an important role. And the way that she delivers that is just, it is the show. I mean, and yet she's only in that scene. She's there for that one moment. It's really...
Yeah, I think with that, it's almost like, so Little Bear Ridge Road ends with the last 5 minutes, this character enters who's like a hospice nurse, spoiler, who comes in and has not had any of the information of the preceding 90 minutes of the play. And she comes in and she basically just reads this document. And I think the trick of that scene is she has no emotional connection to it. And really that's how Joe Mantello told her to read it, which is sort of like, just read it. Because it's like, it's not, you know, like I did a reading of it once and the actors tried to make it kind of beautiful. And I was like, no, it's just, you have no idea what this is. You're just like reading, it's almost like you're reading the phone book. But we know what it is, and so I think that like allows us to have a greater catharsis than people up on stage sobbing with each other, you know?
Wow, yeah, absolutely. We'll take one more question and then we'll move on to something else.
Hi. So here we are in New York City, and I myself am from an urban center, Chicago originally. I was wondering if you could share with us your own private Idaho. And bring it to life, because often, at least on this side of the country, Idaho is either potatoes or Ruby Ridge or something. What is your experience of Idaho as a state in this union, and how is it part of the American story, and how has it helped shape you as a writer? And of course, it's in your plays, but can you bring it to life for someone who knows nothing about Ohio?
No, that's to your point.
Idaho.
No. When I went to college here in New York, and I remember I went to Iowa for graduate school, and when I told my friends here in New York I'm going to Iowa for grad school, they were like, "Oh, you're going home." It's like, nope, 1,500 miles away. My family goes back in, not even just Idaho, but specifically my hometown, very, very far. My great? Either 2 or 3 greats grandfather was from Ohio, fought in the Civil War, moved to Utah, and then moved up to Idaho before it was a state and homesteaded in my hometown. He built, actually, there's a building called the Moscow Hotel that still is there to this day. And so, like, I feel very connected to that part of the country. Like really, I'm the only person in my family to have left. I mean, I suppose I have like an aunt and uncle in Vancouver, Washington, but that's really it. I'm certainly the only one who's moved to the East Coast. And boy, I don't know. It's hard for me to kind of characterize, because it also has really changed over the years. And I think that, like, because I haven't lived there in 26 years, in the beginning, I think I was writing these kind of like things that I saw and things that I recognized. But weirdly, there's like the Idaho that's been going on for the last 26 years, 3,000 miles away. And then there's like the Idaho that I've been writing. You know what I mean? That almost sounds like a pretentious way to say it. But like, and they correspond to each other, but I don't think they directly reflect one another, you know? I mean, in some ways, they have kind of grown with it. I mean, right now, Idaho is a very, very, very conservative state. It has extremely conservative laws, extremely conservative lawmakers. When I was growing up, our governor was a guy named Butch Otter, who was a card-carrying libertarian. The last 10 years or so, there's been this big influx of aggrieved Californians kind of moving to northern Idaho. And the crazy thing was, like, when I was a kid, I'm from northern Idaho, the Panhandle, and about an hour north of where I grew up was an Aryan Nation compound. And so I would see skinheads around. It was just kind of like you would see them. That all went away in the late 90s, but now it's being replaced by this new wave of Christian nationalism. The difference being these are just like guys in sweater vests who live in, you know, condos, and like, but they hold these like pretty much the same beliefs as those skinheads did. They're just not as loud about them. So there's that aspect to Idaho, but then the other side of the coin is sort of like the sense of community in places like that. I mean, if you can think about like living in a town that is basically like, this is not my hometown. My hometown's like probably 17,000 people. It's a college town. But like, you know, my father grew up in a town called Troy, which is about 11 miles away from Moscow. And when he was a kid, it was mostly Swedish speaking, because it was all these Swedish immigrants who had homesteaded there, like my great-grandmother, who came from Sweden in like the teens, I guess. And she didn't speak English until she was like 15, you know. And she was born in Idaho, you know. So there's that really tight-knit sense of community, and there's also like this, I've heard it referred to as like a soft economy, where it's like, if you think like being in a place like New York City, you can't walk down the street without a pile of receipts, you know what I mean? Like, and images of you, cameras of you, blah, blah, blah. But in these smaller communities, you know, it'll be like, you'll fix my car if I paint your fence, or what, you know what I mean? There's just like a different sense of community and connectedness that stands in real contrast to like one of my dad's friends who owns 1,500 guns. You know, like there's a real contrast. It's the land of contrast. But it's also a place I love, and a place I go back to all the time because my family's all there. So it's also like a land of great natural beauty. I think it has the most wilderness area out of percentage-wise any other state in the union, maybe except Alaska. Yeah, I hope that gives you like a basic picture.
Thanks, Sam. I see your hand. We're going to move on to something, but when we come back to questions, you are the first question. Yep, absolutely. So May and Sam had a great idea for something we could do in the midst of this talk, which is to do a scene from Little Bear Ridge Road. So if you guys would like to set it up.
Yeah, so this is a play that I had on Broadway a few months ago. It's in 3 parts. It's set over the course of the pandemic. So part 1 is 2020, part 2 is 2021, and part 3 is 2022. The main character, the only characters in part 1 are an aunt and a nephew, who are kind of like, because his dad, her brother, has just died, and so he's back in town to kind of settle the estate, and they kind of like agree that he can stick around for a while longer because he's been living out of his car. So this is the first scene of part 2. So it's 1 year after that, and it's the first time. I don't know who you guys are playing. Ethan is the nephew character, the main character, and Ben.
My name's Ben.
Yeah, your name's Ben. Ben is playing James, who they're meeting for the first time. And basically what happens is the couch rotates and all of a sudden we realize that we're at a bar. I think that's enough, right? Yeah. Do you guys want mics?
Yeah, I just want to thank Ben Miller and Luke Cousins, who got my invitation to do this on Friday.
We can theater it. Just
We
can
Yeah, maybe Mike's got it.
Whatever you want.
I had really solid theater training.
You're gonna follow along.
I will do my part. Thank you. 2021, scene 1. Roughly 1 year later, the couch rotates so it's facing upstage. Ethan stands at the back of the couch facing out with James, a bookish man of about his age. They are at a bar. Country music plays in the background.
Hey. Hey. This is kind of weird.
Already?
No, I just mean, it's just still weird being at a bar. I've gone to a few since things reopened, but it's still weird.
Oh. This is my first time in a bar in almost a year.
Oh shit, really?
Yeah.
You live in Moscow?
No, I live outside of town, like past Troy.
Oh.
Yeah, it's my aunt's house. I've been living with my aunt for like a year now. I don't know, who cares?
Okay. I'm James.
I'm Ethan. Jesus Christ. Man, I just shook your hand.
It's really fine.
I haven't done this in a while, I'm sorry.
Trust me, it's fine. I haven't really done the apps much. And especially not in the last year. I had a few bad experiences, so I've been a little wary.
So do you want to go back to your place, or?
Oh.
Like I said, I don't really have any privacy where I'm staying right now, so.
I guess I thought this was sort of a date.
Oh.
I mean, we're at the wagon wheel.
Sure.
I'm not gonna like suck your dick at the wagon wheel.
I guess I just thought. I don't know what I thought. I just didn't realize this was a date.
I mean, is it okay if it's a date?
Ah.
It doesn't have to.
No, that's fine, I guess. Oof. It's a date.
You sure that's okay?
Yeah. Totally. So, you live here in Moscow?
Yeah, for now. Getting my master's at the U of I.
In what?
Physics, kind of specializing in astrophysics.
Oh. So, you want to be like an astronaut?
You realize there are other things that you can do with a degree in astrophysics, right?
No, sure. But like what?
Like, I could be an academic.
So you want to either be a professor or an astronaut?
James takes a drink.
I got my master's a couple years back from UW.
In what?
Fiction.
Oh, yeah, that's way more practical.
What?
So you're a writer?
I guess. Depends on your definition. I am not currently writing, no.
Why not?
I mean, this situation I'm in now, living with my aunt, it's not permanent, and it's just hard to write out there, I guess. At first I thought maybe I'll start writing again, maybe I'll have some sort of transcendent Walden-like experience. But in reality, most of my days are just driving all the way back to Walmart for something I forgot to buy the day before, and I'm not writing shit.
Why'd you come here in the first place?
My dad died, and I needed to come back and like settle the estate, such as it is.
God, I'm sorry.
Don't be. He was a terrible drug addict. I hadn't spoken to him in years. And things were weird for me in Seattle. I was living with this guy who was a lawyer who had this beautiful loft in Capitol Hill. It was fine at first, but then he started like accusing me of lying and tracking my phone, and then he started nurturing a coke habit. And anyway, I came here and I finally sold off my dad's house here in Moscow last year. And of course, turns out my dad was in all this debt, so after paying that off and taxes, blah, 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 I only saw a little over $8,000 when it was all done. Which isn't nothing, but not what I was hoping.
So, why are you still here?
My aunt has cancer,
Oh, no.
and I have no idea how bad it is because she still hasn't told me. I only know because I found some invoices from the hospital in the kitchen. But I'm pretty sure she's getting chemo because every few weeks she comes home from like going to the store or something, and she just doesn't look very good, and she gets a little confused and foggy, and
Well, why wouldn't she say anything?
I'm not sure. I think it might be that she's in denial, or maybe she still doesn't trust me. Said you wanted a real date, so.
Is this how dates normally go for you?
You know, I think we should just bail on this. This isn't exactly what I was expecting.
No.
I'm not really in a position where I want to be dating anyone right now, so
No, wait, just, this doesn't have to be a date, but you came all the way to town for this, just...
I know I'm being weird. I don't know why I told you all that. I just haven't talked to anyone but Sarah in months. It's like I don't know the difference between what's private and what's public anymore.
No, don't worry about it. I was being an asshole. I forced the idea of a date on you.
No, I guess I didn't know what this was. It's just that I don't plan on sticking around here much longer.
Where are you gonna go?
I have no idea. I have no idea. What about you? Where do you want to go once you finish?
I'm not totally sure. I may apply to some PhD programs or... It's just tough. My dad owns this chain of dry cleaners up in Coeur d'Alene where I grew up. He always expected me to take it over from him, but...
But you want to be an astronaut.
Exactly, I'm gonna be an astronaut. Suffice it to say, it's almost a daily battle with him. He still insists on believing that I'm gonna move back home once I'm finished, even though my sister actually wants to take over the business, and she would be so much better at it than me. It's just because she's a woman, I swear. I'm sorry about your aunt.
It's okay. I mean, for all I know, it's in remission, or I just don't know how to ask her.
Are you two close?
I mean, to be honest, I never really spent much time with her. My mom took off when I was little, then my dad started using all the time, and when I was like 9 or 10, when things started getting really bad, I called her and I asked her to get me out of there, and she did it. That's kind of a hard thing to forget.
James's phone dings. He looks at it.
Shit. I'm sorry, can I just...
Sure.
Hey, are you okay? Okay, just, I'm gonna come right now, okay? I'll call you when I get in the car. I'm so sorry.
Is everything okay?
It's my sister. She's married to this fucking guy, Derek. I think I need to go make sure she's okay. Fucking Derek.
James gets up, taking some cash out of his wallet.
Well, thanks for whatever this was.
Yeah, you should talk with your aunt.
What?
I know we just met, and maybe I'll never hear from you again, but I really think you should talk with your aunt.
James exits. Ethan watches him go. End of scene.
They got that scene Friday?
Yeah.
Wow. Bravo.
Thanks. Thanks for letting us do it.
Ethan is such a wonderfully complicated character. To me, he feels like a magnet that can't decide whether it wants to attract or repel, and is kind of constantly doing both. Just where you said that there was a billboard that inspired the play. Can you say more about that and maybe where Ethan came from?
Yeah, so this was like right before the pandemic. I think right before, because we were coming back from my in-laws in Boston. We were going through Providence, and I saw a billboard for something called, in my mind, it was called Cozy TV, and it's some like platform where you can watch like all those old shows from the 50s. And it just made me kind of like, I think I mentioned before, like TV is anesthesia. And there's no TV in this scene, but like there's a lot of television watching throughout the play. And the play is actually structured around one specific show that they're watching, and so it's 3 seasons of this really bad show about aliens that you never really understand. But it kind of factors in the end, because there's a lot of themes about like the universe and the vastness of the universe and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, Ethan, I don't know. I mean, this was the first play I wrote coming out of the pandemic. And I wrote the play in a very concrete way because Laurie, Metcalf, and Joe Mantello asked me to write them a play, which was a very specific situation where like I had I hadn't written a play in 2 years, which like terrified me because I haven't gone that long without writing a play since I was 17, and but there was just no reason to in the pandemic, and so it came from that very concrete place, and I think I wanted to write a play that was set during the course of the pandemic, but was not in any way about the pandemic. It was really just about these people being sort of like forced to isolate together. There's very little COVID talk in the play. I don't even think the word COVID is even mentioned. But yeah, I mean, maybe Ethan kind of came from my own fear of like being a shutdown writer, like has this muscle atrophied. You know, and he finally, at the very end, you realize that he has started writing again, and that's a sort of like the single moment of grace that happens at the end of the play. But yeah, so it's a couple different vectors I think it came from.
I think in the first scene maybe he's wearing a mask for about half the scene until she says you might as well, and that's as much as we need. You just see the mask and you know where we are. Again, it's there's sort of a minimalism to your approach. You find the one thing that can represent the whole, and that's all we need to kind of run with you. There's a scene in I think it's Rest, or there's a moment or a bit. The sliding doors at this retirement home, they keep opening and closing at random times. It's just this one until the end. There's just that one thing, and it's enough to tell you everything you need to know about this world. I'm amazed. I would love to know where those specific details to represent a whole come from. There might not be an answer to that question.
I don't know I don't even know how to answer that question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like, I always think that like making a play is like, you're just, even when you have an idea for a play, it doesn't like all come to you at once. It's a process, you're building something, and I think, I think I am attracted to those small gestures that point to something really huge, like in Little Bear, the one mask representing a global plague, or arrest, like the doors kind of representing God, maybe. But yeah, I've always just been fascinated in you use the word mundane, those mundane objects that you can tie to something larger. I just think there's kind of a weird joy to have in that.
Yeah, I am still so haunted. I read in the case of the existence of God, and there is that fear that one of the dads has of losing their child and then finding one of their toys, and that struck me so deeply. And then when I'm cleaning my daughter's room or trying to like clear out the clutter, I'm like, I endow this object like, but this is about passing of time. This is like the meaning of your life. So it just, those little details are so human and they're so relatable. And I found that in Little Bear Bridge Road when he says, I've never, it's such a painful admission, but he says, I've never been further than Seattle.
Oh, I've never been, he says, I've never been east of Montana.
East of Montana.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just that tie, when you were talking about your private Idaho, but like this tie to the land or the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
And these what would seem like a very small step, to find themselves or their potential. They are I don't know, a step into the void of pain or uncertainty.
Yeah, and to your point, they're small gestures.
They're small gestures.
I premiered a play about a year ago at Signature, and like it ends with a game of Uno, and that's the big catharsis of the play. Is these two brothers playing Uno. So yeah, I don't know. There's just something about, I've just always been interested in those really mundane small gestures that can just point to something larger. I don't know. It goes back to the Burrow candelabra on a rock. I mean, maybe it's just more interesting to have an emotional catharsis in a game of Uno than two brothers saying "I love you" and crying.
We're going to get to you in 1 second. I just want to follow up on that in one way, but then you're next, right? You might be our last question, in fact. Do we have time? We have a little time? Okay, good. There was like a gasp in the room. I'm so sorry. This is sort of related, I think. Your plays are haunted by God in so many different ways. I mean, it can be very overt, like so many characters who have a certain take on God and religion that it sort of allows them to have some kind of control or comprehension of life, to sort of very small things like the names of characters. I can't remember which play it is, where it's a great wilderness. Isaac and Daniel are the boys. These sort of, and it sort of appears in so many different ways. At the end of the whale, the way that his death or whatever that is happens. And I'm just fascinated, sort of, why or how that relates to your own understanding of religion and faith. Like, because it's so prevalent. I think almost every play, religion's going to play a part, and not just in an overt way.
Yeah, it's funny actually. Little Bear is one of my plays that doesn't have any overt discussion. It's certainly not of religion. I mean, I think God does kind of like factor into the play. I don't know. I mean, I think that like I do still consider myself a person of faith. I don't go to a church, but I think for me, like, it's the mystery of faith that always energizes me, and it's always been, maybe given my past, it's been the people who come into my life and say, I have the answers and I can tell you what God is, that I'm just like, you're a snake oil salesman. Like, And it's the people that I'm really attracted to are the people who sort of like exist in the mystery of faith and exist in the mystery of God and the unknowable, and faith for its own sake. And so I think it's like, because of that, like God and faith and religion can't be easy in the plays, you know what I mean? I think it's like, it can, and even when I write about like fundamentalists, it doesn't feel like, when I write about fundamentalism, it feels like I'm writing about a power structure, not necessarily God. Do you know what I mean? Like and people who like exist within a power structure who, like, some of whom are genuinely seeking the divine, you know, in a broken system. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, like I read an interview with you where someone said, would you say that this play or many of your plays are gay plays? And you said no. And I was thinking, yeah, and it makes sense in a religious sense as well. If people said, are his plays religious? I'd say, no, not in the way I think you think that would mean. Even though God figures much more prominently in your plays than, say, in a lot of Graham Greene novels, or maybe even some Flannery O'Connor stories. But it's very different in kind of what you're doing with it.
Yeah, I think the gay play thing I've always struggled with a little bit too, because it's somehow like saying like I write gay plays, it's almost insinuating that I only write for gay people. And I just don't think, even the plays that are filled with, I have plenty of plays with gay people in them, like I don't think they're expressly for gay people. And I think we're finally kind of getting to the point culturally where we can recognize that like a straight person can watch a story about a gay person and be equally as moved, you know. But yeah, religion is the same. I don't think of myself as a religious writer, but or even like a spiritual, right? You know what I mean? But I just, yeah, I find the mystery. I'm repeating myself, but it's the mystery of it that really intoxicates me, and also I think is dramatically interesting. You know.
Yeah, it's elusive, and yet it keeps us as audience, I think, constantly engaged and sort of wondering as well. Your question. So sorry for making you wait so long.
Thank you so much. After I just watched the scene, those two, like I saw two young cute men, and they showed the awkwardness, and it showed like how they were so shy but so genuine and slowly open to each other. Actually, I just watched The Whale last night because I was like, oh, tomorrow I'm gonna go to the event. If I just go without seeing the movie, it feels so wrong. So I just watched last night and I teared up. And because the movie also gave me a very like a genuine and shy feeling, so I really loved it. So my question is, so you are still teaching. So how do you feel about teaching, and do you think writing could be taught?
Ooh, very good question. It's funny, I was saying this earlier, that I think the best class I ever taught was here. It was over 10 years ago, and it was a script analysis course. And it was where we would just read a play and just rip it apart and just see how it works. And I felt so at home. But I actually don't teach currently. It's been a few years. But I struggle as a playwriting teacher because, like, you know, like a student brings in 10 pages of a play, and I'm like, maybe it's garbage, maybe it's Hamlet. I have no idea. You know what I mean? Because like some of my favorite plays have been plays that like don't conform to what is thought of as traditional rules, you know, for playwriting. Generally speaking, I think most people would say, do not write a play about two guys in a cubicle who don't stand up. Do you know what I mean? Who are just trying to figure out the terms on a small business loan. Generally speak, like if you came to me 15 years ago and said, hey, do you want to go to this rap musical about Alexander Hamilton? I would say, no, thank you. That doesn't sound good at all. So it's like, part of this is sort of like execution is everything. You know what I mean? And I think execution, I think it can be sort of taught. I think it can, but not taught, because then that would be like kind of giving people the roadmap for how to do it. You know what I mean? And one thing I do a lot when I teach playwriting that I do think can be kind of effective is I have every student write 10 rules for playwriting that only applies to themselves. And that can be like, no more than 5 characters. That can be like, always comedic drama. You know, it can be just like, it's about like shaping your craft to conform to your taste. And I don't know about other people in this room, but I feel like I have learned more about playwriting, about the kind of plays I want to see by seeing theater I don't like, rather than seeing and reading plays I don't like, rather than seeing theater I love. Because I love seeing theater that I love, but I don't necessarily grow as a writer from that, because like my takeaway from that is not like, well, I'm just going to emulate that writer. Do you know what I mean? Because then what am I doing? But if I see a play and I'm like, I didn't like that, let me see if I can identify what I don't like about the play and how I can kind of move around that. And it's not even like, it's just my taste. It's not like quality, capital Q, platonic ideal of a good play. It's really just like the kind of play that I want to make. And if I can slowly hone in, and as a teacher, if I can slowly guide students toward honing in on the kinds of plays they really want to write, then then that's like the process of finding your voice. It's something I'm always finding that I'm saying to my students is loosen your grip, like you're holding on too tight. Like you're controlling these characters, there's no oxygen. Like allow yourself to just like breathe with these characters, you know what I mean? If it's not plotty or interesting enough, we'll deal with that later, you know? So yeah, it's a complicated question. It's a very complicated question.
Moderator privilege. I mean, how much teaching is so central to the whale.
Yeah.
I mean, that's also such a central thing. And is it, how much of that is you? I loved it.
I
just
was
the
an
way you're
expository-
trying to get them.
Yeah, I taught when I was writing The Whale, I was teaching expository writing at Rutgers. And that is a huge program. It's like a state requirement. And so there's dozens and dozens and dozens of teachers. And the curriculum is very rigid because it kind of has to be, because every single student at that university has to take it. And I found myself teaching a quality of writing that I just like didn't believe in, because it's all about just like taking your voice out of it and being more objective, which everybody should know how to do that. But it was just so anathema to the kind of writing that I was interested in that I found myself saying things to my students, like Charlie says, just like, please, just, I don't care if it's good, just write me something honest. Like, just tell me something you actually believe. And that played a huge part in how The Whale turned out. There's actually a line in the play and in the movie that I got from a student when I said, like, please just write me something honest. Just tell me something honest. Just start from, you know, these were kids who were like cut and pasting Wikipedia. You know, and I had one student write me the line, I think I need to accept that my life isn't going to be very exciting. And that's in the play and the movie. So, yeah, it was pretty direct, actually, the way that I translated that experience.
Thanks, thanks.
Do we have time for other questions? Yeah.
Eva, can we get Eva?
And then one, two, three. Hello. This might be a bit of a heavy question, so I apologize in advance. But something that you said earlier really struck me, that you think bigots remain bigots. And I grew up doing theater with a lot of Christians who had prejudices that were really hurtful to me and to people I cared about. But like you said, they were still sweet and loving people themselves who I had care for. So I wanted to know your thoughts on what role theater has, if any, in creating a better world. Do you think writing can change people? And if not, what's the point?
That's great. I mean, I would not be doing this if I didn't believe that theater, and I think increasingly so with the rise of AI and with like ubiquitous screens, sitting in a room with other people and suspending your disbelief in order to have a cathartic experience with people who do not exist is like a revolutionary act. And I think it's just going to gain more importance and more vitality. As much as like the theater is constantly suffering, you know, and right now we're in a moment of real financial strain, but it's also theater is the cockroach that's going to survive the nuclear holocaust. It's not going away. And like even in the you know, post-apocalyptic nightmare, we're still going to be telling stories on concrete slabs to each other. And I think that like it's been around for thousands of years because it has demonstrated so many times that it can change people and it can move people in a way that, like, I think, yes, film and television can as well, but there's something different. There's something different about being in a shared space with people, and you know, because you think about like the way that most TV and film is made, it's hyper real. Do you know what I mean? It was so bracing for me to like walk onto the set of The Whale, the movie set of The Whale, because I was just like, every single tiny object was absolutely real, and it kind of made me uncomfortable because I actually think that story exists in the realm of metaphor. And when everything was made so real, like I was like, this feels different to me. This feels like a different object. I mean, I personally have been deeply changed by theater. I mean, obviously, I'm sitting here today. I'm not, you know, still in my hometown, attending a fundamentalist Christian school. I think, you know, sorry, now I'm on like a soapbox, but I've seen it happen too many times. I've seen it change too many people to not have faith in it.
Okay, I apologize. I was 10 minutes late. So if you answered this and like your bio.
How dare you, sir?
Yeah, my bad. I would like to hone in on the aspect of the mystery of faith, because you mentioned it a couple of times, theme throughout a lot of your work, and hone in on why the mystery of faith, because you know there's mystery in all of life. You know, the mystery of love, mystery of how a CPU works. I mean, you know, there's mystery in everything, but why exactly the mystery of faith? Why is that an aspect that excites you?
I think because it's kind of like, yes, there is like the mystery of love, but that's something that like, if you talk about like love between two people, like, yeah, that is kind of, there's something ineffable, there's something kind of like hard to pin down about it. But the mystery of faith to me is something that points to kind of the biggest question there is. Do you know what I mean? Of sort of like the nature of us being alive on this planet in this moment, you know, and the reason for us to care for one another and create community. The reason, like the mystery of faith to me just like connects to everything. Like it connects to like, why is murder wrong? You know what I mean? Like we have this like gut reaction, like, well, of course murder is wrong. But like when you actually try to like parse through it, you know, you're like, well, but it's wrong. You know, you start getting these like kind of like circular arguments. And what I like about legitimate arguments about faith and God is they're kind of by definition circular. You know, faith exists for its own sake. You know, and I just think there's just I feel like it just points to everything, and contains everything, and can also be tiny. You know, yeah. Hope that answers your question. That was a little ranty.
Hello. Your work has received a lot of recognition. How do you stay grounded in the face of that recognition, and how do you keep your writing honest to what you want to say?
Boy, I mean, nowadays it's like I have an 8-year-old, and it's like, you know, I mean, you have a 6-year-old. I mean, it's like, at the end of the day, I'm gonna go home and it's just my job to be a dad, you know what I mean? And to like cook dinner, and like, she doesn't care that I got a bad review or that I got an award. She doesn't, I mean, sure she cares, but you know what I mean? Like, it's like, and I think like, you know, you can also, like, you can take the boy out of Idaho, but you can't take the Idaho out of the boy. And I think there's this part of me that's still just like, has more simple pleasures than like the happiest I've been is not getting an award or like going to the Oscars or something. It's been like spending time with my kid and my husband, and like, so, and I think the plays are also like, it would be one thing if I was writing plays set in brownstones on the Upper East Side, but like, the plays are kind of fundamentally about middle and working class people. Yeah. I don't have a really better answer than that, but yeah, it's just like my daily life is just like very similar to everybody else's, you know.
I want to thank you all for your questions. Those were great. And also, obviously, we want to
thank you all for coming. Thank you.
I also want to thank Sam Hunter and May and Jim McDermott. Thank you all very much. And Sam, in lieu of an honorarium, you want us to we're going to make a donation to the
The
Playwrights
Playwright Center in Minneapolis are
in
really
Minneapolis.
hurting right
Can you
now.
tell me why? Yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't really talk. I won't make this a long speech, but so new play development in this country has taken a huge hit. We mentioned the Lark earlier. The Lark was a huge resource for playwrights who were developing their work. So basically, development means not companies that produce plays, but companies that just want to seek to give playwrights the opportunity to hear their plays out loud with actors they really like. And those opportunities are just drying up all over the place. And there's a major one in Minneapolis, which can use all of our support right now, called the Playwright Center. And I don't know the specifics, but did you get that email? I mean, it sounds like they're on the ropes. Yeah, it's really bad. So yeah, so any way we can support them, please.
I would say, it seems so characteristic of you, although we're only just meeting, that you would choose a place like that, because I feel like your work as well is really carrying, along with others, carrying a lot of water for what theater can be and exploring sort of new ways of being theater or new audiences that sort of can connect and sort of find themselves or a future for themselves in the work. So I appreciate that you suggested that, and also just appreciate the gift that you keep giving us with each new play and each new story. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And I'll say, in exchange for all of that, you get a hat.
Hey!
Yeah. This is a Fordham hat, one of those tiny gestures like in your play that encompasses the entire mystery of faith. That's right. Or some sort of mystery. I don't know. Right there. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thanks
everybody.